So welcome back to another episode, and before I begin, I'm going to ask you guys a really fun question. Let me know down below, if you had unlimited money, if some company came to you and said, here's millions of dollars, even $1 billion, go and create your ultimate video game, what would it be? What genre would it be? What style would it be? What would you do with this game? Let me know down below, because that is the entire point of this episode, where I'm going to tell you guys what my ultimate game would be if I had an unlimited budget and I could dream as big as I could into creating my ultimate game. And that's what it is. What is your ultimate game? What would it be to you? I'm going to try to attempt to explain what my ultimate game would be, because I played most games since 1980 all the way up to now. I was playing the Atari 2600 back in the day, to the NES, to now, every console, almost all the games. I swear to God, I played so much stuff. It's absolutely outrageous because I love it. I've always loved it. But has it completely fulfilled me? Yes, it has. But there's a part of my brain that is always longing for something a little bit more that current games cannot deliver. And that's saying something, because we played some incredible games over the years, some of the best games from every single company. So how could I want more? Well, as I say, this is a bit of a dreaming episode where I get to kind of just play with the idea of what I would ultimately love to see. And we have to start in the past for a second here. What created this for me is games like Fighting Fantasy, the choose your own adventure style of role-playing games like this. You'll be like, why are you picking these? Give me a second. Dungeons and Dragons, where you sit around with your friends and collectively come up with storylines and go on adventures, and that game alone is the ultimate video game. And that's kind of what it's about. For me, my ultimate video game would be where you can absolutely do anything you want in a persistent world. And you're going to say, but wait, that's been done. It has been. In Grand Theft Auto is a great example. Skyrim's a great example. Shenmue started a little bit of it back then too. We've seen a little bit of it. I saw Mass Effect back in the day. I got that game because I thought, I get to choose my way through the game. I get to talk to people the way I want and have different outcomes. And I was always disappointed with Mass Effect, and a lot of people get mad at me for this, because I feel I didn't change that much. What I would love is, let's talk about a kind of Dungeons and Dragons style of world, so we can wrap our heads around that. But it could be applied to any world setting. It could be a modern day setting, but I'm just talking about the fantasy genre here. Is that it'd be so amazing to have a persistent world that is changing and evolving if you're there or not. Like, different characters are going on adventures that have nothing to do with you, led by their own AI. Now, this is where we get into it. This style of game would take such a deep level of AI that it's almost would be spooky and scary. And I believe it's what the future holds in a lot of ways. So, okay, great example. I start off. Let's say I appear in the world. You can have VR or you can see your character. Either one of these works for me. And you start walking up the hill, and you can go anywhere. You can walk to the mountains. Like in a lot of games, like Breath of the Wild, you see a mountain, you can walk to it. That kind of stuff we've seen. We've done that. We know what that's about. But what if I see a little hill, and I walk up the side of the hill, and there's a little door, like a Hobbiton style of door. Let's use that for example. And I go in, and just say there's a little gnome character there making tea and all that, and you can completely interact with everything in the entire world. So you walk into his home, he sits down, you sit down, he's like, oh, would you like me to make you some tea? So you're a stranger, you're like, sure. So you sit down, and at this point, it's like the real world. So you can be a nice guy and just sit there and talk to him, and maybe through advanced AI, not scripted, he starts telling you about the world as he knows it at this point from his, everyday life, right? So he has an everyday life that is a complete AI thing, of things he has to do that is not scripted, and it will change depending on what's happening in the world. So it's almost like a real life that he's living, and you're interacting with him, and you can talk to him, and he can tell you things about a neighboring country. Oh, I hear there's like great treasures over there, and you're like, oh, maybe I should go over there, type of thing. Or maybe you get the soup pot and you pour it all over him and kill him and loot his entire place, and you can move things, you can touch every object, you can interact with every object. And of course, like games like Skyrim and things, there'd be consequences. Or maybe there wouldn't be. Maybe he's disliked by everybody in the town. Maybe you did them a favor. I'm talking about that level of interaction. It's fantastic. It would be amazing. And so maybe you leave there and everybody applauds you. Oh, thank God you got rid of him. He was way too nice for our town. We never liked that guy. And then you can start talking to them. Hey, so I'm looking for treasure and all of this. And they're like, why do you go up into the mountains here or go and do this? So many options. There's no one option to do. You can go in any direction, which we've seen in video games. But I'm talking about a world that is changing on the fly completely. Say there's like raids in a village up the road, and maybe the raid is already over. Maybe because of their lives and what they were doing, it's over. You wander in, there's nobody there. You get what's left over in the village. Maybe you don't do anything. Maybe you avoid it. Maybe you go the opposite way of the raiders. That style of thing where it almost... this is where it happens, becomes indistinguishable from real life. You know, it is real life. That's the thing. That's what I'd like to see, where the world is persistently changing on its own accord. But maybe certain things within the galaxy would affect your planet. I'm talking on a scale of that. And people will be like, that's insanity. That's way too advanced. And it is. I'm dreaming here of a world that's like that. A game where you almost wouldn't need another game. You could just live in this world, and maybe you walk down, the path, and some giant creature comes out of nowhere and kills you. One hit, and it's over. And that was your adventure, and you're like, oh my God, and maybe you could restart your save. I don't know. We've seen that to a certain extent, but I'm talking about walking around and interacting with characters that are talking to you from not script, from real AI learning, from the other AI learnings, right? And living in that world. And so that kind of experience would be so extraordinary, especially me coming from a Dungeons and Dragons background. It would be like I could walk in there, say I could even walk in with friends, an online style of game this way. That'd be great. So you all appear there, VR, or you just characters show up and you all interact with the world that way and wander around. You wouldn't need another game. And I wonder if that is the future of, say, RPGs. Is that the future? Will they get that advanced one day? And you know what? Look at the way things have gone. It was the other day, it was the 33rd anniversary of Dragon Warrior coming over here to the West. And I remember picking that up, 33 years ago. An old style of, Dungeons and Dragons style game. Big hit in Japan. But look at what that looked like then and what we have now for video games. Like say with Skyrim or other fantasy genres, it's unbelievable how far we've come in, say, 33 years. So give it another 33 years, give it another 60 years, 100 years. All of a sudden, you'll be able to generate a character. Say you're making a world, generate a character. You can give them a personality. Say, okay, they're going to be a farmer. You plop them down. And then they start interacting with everybody and start living their own lives and becoming their own person. Maybe they might become an adventurer, an NPC. That's what I'm talking about. Maybe they develop their own communities and, go off to join the guard in the castle. Or maybe they decide to take out, down the castle. And then you arrive and you're like, maybe I should stop him. And that's what I'm talking about. That level of interaction where one thing that you do over here may do nothing, but it may absolutely ripple through the entire world and change the whole world. And it might do nothing. But having the choice. And that's what has always, brought me to gaming, is the escapism from, as I said in the past, I did a whole video on this. When I was younger, I wanted to escape from the real world and live in these fantasy worlds. I don't really need it the same way, but I would love the chance to have that level of interaction with a world setting. And I don't think we've seen that, not to the level that I'm talking about. Not to the level I'm talking about, where anything goes, anything is possible. Anything. From the smallest thing, walking down the road, picking up a branch, throwing it over here, Maybe it hits a creature, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you don't see any creatures in the land. Maybe it's a complete verbal adventure you go on because maybe all the monsters are being killed by all the inhabitants, and then you got to go, hey, I'm looking for rare monsters. They're like, oh, there's something off in these caves or something, and then that's another adventure you would go on. Maybe, yeah, you're hunting the last of the rare creatures in the world because all the NPCs have destroyed them to save themselves. That is my ultimate game. That is something that I can only dream about, and let me tell you, as a kid, I'd be sitting in my classroom, and I'd be sitting, this is before the internet, before cell phones, and I'd be drawing, maps and things like that, dreaming of games. And then I've mentioned it in other videos. When I played Skyrim, I thought, they've done it. They've created that game. And they pretty much have with that game. I'm very satisfied. I'm not unsatisfied with gaming, but where they could get to, the level they could get to in the future, as much as we all think we know what games are now, the future, what it holds, is going to be absolutely extraordinary. And I think the trick is AI. Really high level AI. And hopefully not the Skynet kind, where all of a sudden that takes over. We don't want that. We want it in a controlled video game where it's fun and all of that. And what a world that will be. And who knows, maybe my children's children will play that game and they'll say, oh, my great-grandfather always dreamed about this game, and we're playing it today because every year video games get better and better and better and bigger in scope. I mean, Grand Theft Auto alone is a great example of how far they come with a living, breathing world. It's pretty good. You can't interact with everything as I'm talking about, but it's not bad. But the future holds a great amount. So, guys, if you could dream up the ultimate game, what would it be? Would it be like what I was saying? Would it be with heavy AI? We can go anywhere, do anything? Or would you want a smaller little game with just absolutely mesmerizing graphics? Who knows? That's the wonderful thing about gaming is there is no limit to your imagination. That's kind of what it's all about. It all links to that. The power of imagination, creating the power of imagination. That's kind of it, isn't it? It's really fascinating stuff. So anyways, guys, until next time.